Thank you very much, Jessica. We have two guests today. We have Senator Ron Muzzall from District 10, and we have Rachel Dean, the Legislative Aide to Representative Mike Sells from District 38. Thank you both for coming. We welcome you.
Welcome. Thanks very much, Catherine. So today you'll hear from partners from the Tulalip tribes, Snohomish County, the Snohomish Conservation District, and the Washington Farmland Trust. Together, we're advancing the concept of integrated floodplain management advocated by Floodplains by Design. Before we jump into the tour, let's hear some opening remarks from Snohomish Conservation District Executive Director Linda Leishall and the Executive Director of the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for Snohomish County, Lacey Harper. Linda?
Thank you, Jessica. We are excited to brief you on a very successful grant program in the state capital budget called Floodplains by Design. As Jessica said, many partners have joined together and successfully managed projects like we are proposing. We are well positioned to expand our reach with your help. The grant program has significant bipartisan support in the legislature, due in part to the diligent on-the-ground efforts of project sponsors and partners to bring different interests together and create these multiple benefits, including right here in Snohomish County. We ask that you support the governor's request of $70 million in the capital budget this session.
Lacey, would you like to give some opening remarks, please?
Great. Yes, thank you. And a pleasure to be here and to see you all. And I really do thank the legislators for their time. I know how busy it is getting ready for the first day of the legislative session. Thanks, Linda, for those comments. Funding from the Floodplains Design Program allows us to continue our work to protect and preserve land options and support local jobs. The projects on the 2021-23 floodplains design list would create about 2,600 to 890 jobs across Washington, many of which will stay in Snohomish County. Working hand in hand with allowing willing landowners and our partners, we're advancing integrated floodplain management in Snohomish County. Our collaborative effort called Community Floodplain Solution is putting forward new ideas to keep local farmers viable, reduce flood impacts for residents, and restore habitat for threatened salmon. I would like to express my sincere thanks again to all the partners who are here today and work tirelessly every day to improve the safety and quality of life for all of our Snohomish County community. With that, I'm handing it off to Jessica to talk to you more about CFS and how it can benefit our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lacey, and thank you very much, Linda. So we're working in the Snohomish Basin, shown here on this map. The thing to pay attention to on this slide are these purple stars, which are the active projects funded by the 2019 Floodplains by Design funding, Phase 1, and the blue stars are the projects that are proposed in this funding request. This area is plagued by repetitive flood losses. It has Tier 1 priority salmon habitat, some of the most valuable prime agricultural soils in the state, and has been identified by project partners as an area with tremendous multi-benefit opportunity throughout decades of resource planning work. The Snohomish River has a long history of flooding and river migration. Flooding and erosion regularly impact farms, businesses, and residential properties and force the closure of local roads. These photos are some of the impacts that have been faced in that area throughout the last several years. This is also, this map here is a overlay of what we were able to do with the Phase 1 funding to really overlay a lot of the hazards in an area that we're doing work. This ongoing flood risk is complicated by the continued loss of critical salmon habitat essential for the recovery of Chinook and the southern resident orca. As you can see from this graph pulled from the Snohomish River Basin Salmon Conservation Plan, most of the Snohomish River Basin Chinook spawn in the Snohomish and Snoqualmie River mainstems shown in red. Climate conditions contribute to an increased risk from flooding and erosion and continue to damage the viability of agricultural operations. And local food production is in need of support. The demand for housing continues to push developments closer to river communities, and flood events continue to increase in frequency and severity. With so many shared difficulties, a better approach to river management is needed. Community Floodplain Solutions, or CFS, in Snohomish County is a collaborative effort to keep local farms viable, restore habitat for endangered salmon, and reduce flood impacts for residents. Thanks to programs like Floodplains by Design, Phase 1 of CFS was launched in 2019, and the ongoing support of Floodplains by Design is essential to continue to implement multi-benefit projects and approaches in Snohomish County. The Floodplains by Design funding request would support implementation of Phase 2 actions that we will talk to you about today. Phase 2 of CFS furthers the integrated floodplain management approach funded in 2019 and expands its scope to include multiple reaches of the Snohomish and Snohomish rivers in the Snohomish watershed. This slide includes a summary of the benefits from all of the projects in the package. As you can see from this slide, implementation of the actions in this package can result in significant strides towards flood risk reduction, habitat restoration, and agricultural resiliency through actions like acquisitions and easements, farmland and habitat conservation, implementation of agriculture viability and floodway improvements, and the designs of large integrated floodplain projects. Funding for Floodplains by Design program allows us to continue our work to advance mutually beneficial options and support local jobs. As noted in our letter to the governor and referenced earlier by Lacey Harper, the projects on the 2021 to 23 Floodplains by Design list would create over 2,500 jobs across Washington state. With a total cost of over $16 million, the CFS project would generate over 260 new or sustained jobs and roughly $35 million to $40 million in total economic activity, of which between $28 million and $32 million stays in Snohomish County. Now let's visit 3 specific project areas to see dollars at work, helping citizens, fish, and farm interests. We'll begin in the lower Snohomish, known as the Sultan Reach, just south of the city of Sultan. That's this area here. From there, we'll move downstream to the Haskell Slough project near the city of Monroe. That's this one here. And we'll conclude our tour in the estuary near the city of Everett here. The Shinglebolt Slough project is a component of the community floodplain solution effort and is the first stop on our virtual tour. We'll hear about this project from the project manager at Snohomish County. Brett, would you like to take us through an overview?
Yeah, hello. I'm Brett Gaddis. I'm a senior habitat specialist at Snohomish County Surface Water Management, and I'm going to introduce you to a multi-benefit project concept, the Shinglebolt Slough side channel reconnection. And also I'm going to provide some context of the floodplain challenges and our project goals. Next slide. Oh, sorry, go back to the first, I've one behind. This is the aerial photo of the Snohomish River. It's a 2020 aerial photo, and it's within the Sultan Reach. To the north of the main Stem River, you can see the city of Sultan, Highway 2, the BNSF Railroad, the Sultan and Wallace River confluences. To the south, you see agricultural fields, homes, roads, bridges, and floodplain side channels. It's a busy site, floodplain. This is a highly active river reach within ongoing with a lot of natural river process, meaning change. There's flood hazards, agriculture uses, and habitat opportunities. The Snohomish Basin Salmon Recovery Plan identifies increasing off-channel habitat connection, primarily side channels, as key recovery goals. I want to point out the Shinglebolt Slough specific area south of Sultan across the main Stem River Bridge, that farm field right there, that used to be an old side channel. Next slide. Looking at the 1938 aerial photo, we see the river was more active, open bars, a lot more river channels. Shinglebolt Slough was flowing. While this photo doesn't represent ecologically intact area or our restoration goals, it does show that the river changes over time and it impacts infrastructure, land use, and creates habitat. Next slide. This 1995 aerial photo, it was actually a photograph taken probably by staff at Surface Water Management at the time, was about a 5 to 10 year flood event, meaning that that happens about every 5 to 10 years. The key visuals are that several homes are underwater, the roads are blocked by water, fields are inundated, floodplain channels are active, subject to river process, meaning change. And you can see the remnant Shinglebolt Slough side channel crossing that field. Thanks, Jessica, for a pointer. That's awesome. You can also see the levee to the north there, the Groenville levee. That's a historic levee that was in place for a different bridge alignment. And then the current bridge alignment and the plug levee that protects the infrastructure in the area. The flood of record in 2006, we saw damage across that field to the levee and also the road, and the bridge needed to be repaired that year. Next slide. This is the 2006 flood of record. Downtown Snohomish, or not Snohomish, Sultan was flooded, and the flooding impacts extend into the city of Sultan and the adjacent floodplain. This brief look at conditions and constraints we're trying to improve and mitigate for flooding, farming, and fish in the area. Next slide. River and floodplain solutions can provide benefits or mitigation to flooding impacts, agricultural benefits, and fish metrics on an individual basis, or in some cases, large projects can provide multi-benefit aspects to all these needs. Our Shinglebolt Slough project aims to reduce or mitigate flood hazards, retain a usable area of agricultural land, and increase Snohomish River Chinook critical habitat. Acquisitions and public ownership have also benefits through public access like parks and an option for landowners in a changing landscape. Next slide. This is the project concept. It's a guide for feasibility and design analysis that will evaluate project alternatives, inform stakeholders, and floodplain planning. The background of this is the LiDAR image to show the floodplain channels. They're pretty extensive in the area. The concept is to remove as much as feasible of the historic levee revetments, the north end there, thanks, and at the same time provide for road and bridge protection. This may include some additional road designs, a setback levee, or biological river controls. The project removes floodplain fill and reconnects the side channel to flows used by juvenile rearing Chinook, and enhances the existing downstream habitat with wood placement. That's okay. And then we'll establish a large riparian buffer to the north side of the side channel. And we will retain about 10 acres of quality ag habitat on the south side. Our current funding covers the project, land acquisition, and early feasibility and design work. Additional funding will be required to finalize design and construct the project. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Brett. That's fantastic. The second stop on our tour is the Haskell Slough water conveyance and connectivity improvements. We'll hear a bit about this effort from our partners at the Washington Farmland Trust and the Tulalip tribes. Robin?
Yeah, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. My name is Robin Fay, and I'm the Senior Conservation Manager with Washington Farmland Trust. I'm going to talk a little bit with you about our role in the Haskell Slough Integrated Acquisition Project, the project area, which you can see here on this aerial photo. For us at Washington Farmland Trust, this project started with the goal that's core to our mission, which is to protect working farmland as agricultural land for generations to come. And what we discovered really quickly is that it would require strong partnerships to be successful, not only in protecting the farmland from being converted out of agriculture, but also preserving the 2 miles of main stem Snohomish riparian habitat and the off-channel habitat in Haskell Slough. The Tulalip tribes were the natural partner to us in many ways and felt like the most appropriate entity to steward that critical habitat into the future. Unfortunately for us, the tribes were really willing to dive in with us and dedicate the capacity to figure out how we make this work. And if you could switch to the next slide. This is a map, kind of overview map of the property outlined in red. And the learning opportunity for us here is figuring out how to take this large, roughly 260 acre historic farm property that also includes really critical habitat and break it into those component parts in a way that leverages fish and farm funding and paves the way for productive habitat and viable farmland to be successful as we move forward. Currently, we're working with our partners at the tribes and at Snohomish County to transfer ownership of the riparian area, which is shown here in kind of the darker shade of green, both the riparian area along the river and those habitat areas of Haskell Slough, transfer ownership of those areas to the tribes and ensure the remaining farmland is permanently conserved as agricultural land with a conservation easement. If you go to the next slide. This example where there is working farmland and viable habitat side by side is one we'd really like to be able to replicate in the Snohomish Basin. And programs like Floodplains by Design are critical in allowing us to take these kinds of integrated floodplain acquisition projects and carry them forward successfully. And I think these two photos, both taken on the property, really just a stone's throw from each other, really represent kind of the ability for those two uses to exist and coincide. And with that, I'll pass it over to Brett with the Tulalip tribes.
Hey, thanks, Robin. It's been really great working with you and everybody else on this call. My name's Brett Shattuck. I'm a restoration ecologist with the Tulalip tribes, and we were able to put together a little video tour for you that should just take a few minutes here. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Yeah, and I'm Brett Shattuck, and I'm not Brett Caddis.
We're on the banks of the Snohomish River, the beautiful Snohomish River, one of the primary watersheds of the Tulalip tribes. My name is Brett Shattuck. I'm a restoration ecologist with the Tulalip tribes, and we're here today to discuss a restoration project like a lot of restoration projects we do throughout the basin to help with salmon recovery and multi-benefit projects. Haskell Slough is located at this critical point in the Snohomish River just south of the town of Monroe, and it's a 2.4 mile, over 70-acre side channel of the Snohomish River that's so important, especially for early juvenile rearing, and that's what we've seen is the bottleneck for salmon recovery. But it's also really important to other people in the basin, including our farming community and people and infrastructure that's vulnerable to flooding. At the inlet of Haskell Slough is a training dike or levee that helps figure out where water can go, push water to one side of the river. Unfortunately, it was installed a long time ago, has been overtopped many times, and it's degraded over time. And in fact, it's in a pretty bad state with a lot of risk to downstream infrastructure, including some highways and some culverts and some access to people's land. And that levee needs a long-term fix. Right now we have funding that's already in hand for the purchase of the majority of this property out here. That's phase one. We're underway with that right now. Phase two is working together with our partners in farming, Washington Farmland Trust, the county, Snohomish Conservation District, and others, the farmland community, to basically work to restore connectivity where we can help fish, we can help farms, we can help flooding and prevent damage to infrastructure, all in one project.
Thanks again. Really appreciate it. I'll be here to answer questions.
Thanks very much, Brett. Okay, whoops, sorry, 1 second here. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the third and final stop along our virtual tour is the Swans Trail Slough Restoration and Agricultural Resilience Project. We'll get an overview of this project from our partners at the Snohomish Conservation District. Bennett?
Hi, my name is Bennett LaFawn, and I'm the Agriculture and Floodplains Resilience Project Manager at Snohomish Conservation District. Today, I'm going to share with you a few details on the multi-benefit project we're developing in Swans Trail Slough. This is a project that shows how we can leverage landscape-scale opportunities to simultaneously benefit agriculture, fish, habitat, and flood protection. This design work is driven by Floodplains by Design, but RCPP, CREP, Natural Resources Investments, Shellfish Program, and Conservation Technical Assistance funding are working together to provide critical match and leverage to make this project a reality and other projects like it. Drainage Improvement District 13 is a narrow district nested between the Snohomish River and the largely developed Phobes Hill uplands. Next slide. Just over 400 of the 580 total acres in the district support commercial agriculture, primarily growing hay and silage, as well as supporting cattle, small livestock, vegetables, fruit, agritourism, and other smaller enterprises. Next slide. Swans Trail Slough is part of the drainage system managed by DD13, which maintains a system of ditches, river levees, and a pump station. The slough is a natural drainage that collects water off of the uplands and flows south to north along a sliver of farmland north of the old railroad grade. The railroad grade separates the slough from a system of managed ditches that drain most of the farmland in the district. These two systems meet up approximately halfway up the district. The water from both systems gravity drains into EB Slough through a 6-foot diameter tide gate when the water level in EB Slough is lower than in Swans Trail Slough. Yeah, that's it exactly. And when the water level in EB Slough is high due to snowmelt or storms, the district runs its 12-inch diameter fish-friendly pump to move water out of the district, primarily in the spring. Next slide. Changing weather patterns are likely to triple the frequency of floods by 2050 at the 17-foot stage, which can overtop levees, flood structures, and require risk management such as livestock evacuation. Despite being 8 miles upriver, Swans Trail Slough is tidally influenced due to the low river gradient. Because of this, sea level rise may further exacerbate flood issues. To create resilience to future flood events, existing drainage infrastructure such as culverts and pipes may need to be upgraded, along with levee and potential pump station upgrades. Next slide. Swans Slough is currently connected at its downstream end to the Snohomish River. A landowner on the slough's upstream end is interested in turning much of his forested property into habitat, and this area of the slough could serve as essential rearing habitat for trout and salmon with some improvements. As well, fish are currently able to enter agricultural drainage systems. Not only are these ditches terrible for fish, but fish presence causes a permitting issue for farmers when they're trying to maintain their ditches. Next slide. Snohomish Conservation District has been working with DD13 to develop a plan to maximize the habitat benefits of the slough and improve drainage in the district. Our partners have vetted and backed this project as an ideal example of a multi-benefit project. SED is working with Cardno to model alternatives which will separate out fish systems, increase drainage, and take advantage of the slough to develop new habitat. Increased habitat north of the railroad grade may also provide additional flood storage. Next slide. Cardno is exploring 3 concept alternatives with the intent to present alternatives to landowners in the spring of 2021. When landowners select a preferred alternative, Cardno will develop it to a 30% design. Future Floodplains by Design funding is intended to bring this project to implementation. Next slide. Cardno's 3 proposed alternatives explore different ways to split habitat and agricultural drainage systems. Solutions focus on levee improvements, ditch pluggings, culvert upgrades, pump relocation, and changes to outlets to the Snohomish River. Ideal scenarios may also include a downstream connection to former DD6, opening up significant wetland space as rearing habitat, and an upstream connection, increasing fish access and hydraulic conveyance. For the sake of time and for this presentation, we're going to focus on alternatives 3 and 4, the most extensive upgrades, to give you an idea of what might be possible. Next slide. Here we're looking at alternative 3. This includes no pump and tide gate relocation, a dike breach with full or partial estuary restoration of former DD6, and installation of a self-regulating tide gate, excavation of a new primary maintained drainage ditch, including a new culvert crossing, and construction of a new separation levee along the alignment of the former railroad. Most importantly, it also includes aquatic isolation of Swans Slough as habitat for juvenile salmonids and other riparian flora and fauna, and an extension of Swans Slough as a wall-based channel for improved wetland and aquatic rearing habitat. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Alternative 4 can be added to any alternative and outlines an upstream flow connection with self-regulating tide gate from the main Snohomish River channel to the southeast corner of DD13. Here we're looking at a spring conditions model. This model shows spring conditions flooding. In blue, you see a range of flooding depth from 0 to 10 feet deep. In yellows, reds, and greens, there's elevations that are above waterline, and the black fine lines are a modeling grid with varying levels of resolution. This right here is an existing conditions model, but we plan to run the same model with all the alternatives so we can see how they will change given the change the movement of water within DD13 given the application of any alternative. We're really excited to use these tools to share the possibilities in DD13 with stakeholders. I just want to say thank you for your time. We're excited to be able to start to show this project and how it's coming along as an example of how we can improve drainage and ease of maintenance while increasing fish habitat and flood storage, and as a prime example of how farm fish and flood interests can find mutual benefit and common ground. Let me turn this over to SED Executive Director Linda Leischall for some final words.
Thank you, Bennett, and all of our presenters. I'd like to emphasize that critical factors in accomplishing these projects are the collaborative partnerships that we have established and other funding sources that provide leverage and match. The funding sources that conservation districts and private landowners rely on include the Washington State Conservation Commission requests, such as the Conservation Technical Assistance request for $5 million, the CREP Riparian State Match, the Natural Resource Investments request, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, also known as RCPP, and the Shellfish Program. These funds are all critical for us to do our work. The projects we've highlighted and many more proposed are beneficial to Puget Sound recovery and will advance integrated floodplain management. Projects like the Fall City Project in King County and the Stillaguamish Watershed Integrated Floodplain Management Project have the potential to improve a large portion of priority floodplain area and advance IFM in the Snohomish and Stillaguamish watersheds. We respectfully request your support for the $70 million Floodplain by Design budget request, as well as other capital budget requests that implement the projects supported by CFS. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you being here today. And we'd like to now provide some time for questions. And if you have questions, be sure to unmute.
Well, I don't think I have any questions since you presented a bunch of information, but obviously there's a lot of work gone into that, a lot of engineering gone into that as we're looking at trying to provide both habitat and flood alternatives. The Swans Trail, I was trying to follow that along. Is there going to be a reduction in total farmland there as that is implemented?
No, there will not. Currently, everything that project is affecting is not being used as farmland. Some of it is habitat from a private landowner, and the rest of it's kind of unusable, sort of swampy land that we're just going to be increasing the hydraulic conveyance to. The agricultural land, the only thing that's going to be changing there is some improved drainage.
Yeah, well, we all know by the time you get down there, it's wet.
Yeah.
Haskell Slough, where you were going through that, now that's going to change some dynamics there as far as the farmland that it abuts, correct?
Hey, this is Brett Shattuck with the Tulalip Tribes, and we're working really closely with both the county and with Washington Farmland Trust and others. The intent here is to really not change too much when it comes to farming ability of this area. The hope is to really maintain the farming ability here and actually try to reduce the kind of those lower end floods that start impacting people, like the 5 and 10 year events, or maybe a little less than that, that really impact people. So in terms of area of farmable land, we really don't expect to see much of a change. The only exception to that could be some small potential setback levies and things like that located on current farmland, but we don't expect significant changes in farmland, and we actually hope that will help reduce flooding.
Okay. And then the first one, which was up at Skycomish, on the Skycomish at Sultan. That one, that one where the old slough was there. And of course, it's fun to look at that. I think it was a 1938 picture of that and see the changes there. It's pretty amazing to see how that river continued to make that oxbow on there. And moving out away from that, that is by taking out, was that Roosevelt levee there, and allowing that access to the slough. Is that that's gonna impact that ground behind that levee? Is it not?
Yeah,
So,
this is Brett Gaddis from Snohomish County Surface Water. Yes, we work really close with the landowners out there, the Groenville Dairy Farm, and that piece of property has some challenges. Like I told you a little bit earlier, that there's erosion problems at the north side there, the flooding that makes it wet, and while it would be a reduction, their crops in that area, they usually do corn, feed corn there, and it doesn't grow very well on the north side of that. The prime ag land is the southern half of that parcel that we're retaining, the 10 acres. And additionally, this chunk of property for the Groenvelds is kind of a satellite property where they have to drive their farm equipment on Highway 2 to get over to it, and that presents some challenges. So this is a piece of property that we've been working with the landowners, and also looking for alternatives to replace any additional that property that would be lost, providing it through a lease back of another piece of property if we can get something.
okay. I think that'd be the only questions I've got at this time.
Thank you so much, Senator Muzzall. Does anybody else have any questions before we close? All right. Well, thank you everybody for participating today, and do feel free to reach out if you have any further questions.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Happy New Year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.